The sound of distant thunder rolled across the skies, but it was not thunder. It was the echo of ships breaking through the atmosphere, metal cutting against the air, fire trailing behind their descent. The people of Earth had known war before, but this was something new, something far greater. The alien armadas did not hide their presence. Their colossal shadows fell over cities, seas, and forests. Humanity's weapons were prepared, but fear grew in every heart. They had heard stories about the invaders, giants clad in living armor, warriors bred for battle, ruthless and cold. And yet no one expected the war to begin so suddenly. Among the chaos, a young man named Kale found himself far from the safety of cities. He had once been a soldier, but now he was only a traveler caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Smoke rose in the distance, and the night glowed orange from burning ships. Villages scattered across the valley lay silent. There, people either gone or hiding. Kale walked carefully, his old armor still strapped across his chest, his hand tight on the hilt of a battered blade. He was not looking for glory, only survival. The forest around him was alive with strange sounds. Vines twisted unnaturally, pulsing with faint light, as if the land itself had been changed by the alien arrival. Kale felt watched, but he pressed forward. His breath quickened when he heard a sound ahead, sharp and steady. It was not the cry of a beast, nor the roar of machines. It was the sound of armor moving. From the shadows stepped a figure unlike any he had seen before. She was tall, her hair flowing like strands of green fire, her skin shimmering faintly in the dim light. Her armor was not forged of steel but of living material, curving perfectly across her body like the scales of some ancient dragon. Her eyes glowed with dangerous light, fixed on Kale as if he were prey. Kale's first thought was to run, but his body refused. Something in her presence held him still. She did not attack immediately. Instead, she studied him, her head tilting slightly, as if measuring his worth. The stories had said these warriors did not waste words, but when she spoke, her voice was calm, deep and curious. "You are human," she said. Her words sent a shiver down his spine. He had not expected her to speak his language. Kale gripped, his sword tighter, though he knew it would do little against someone like her. "I am," he answered cautiously. She stepped closer, her movements smooth and powerful. Each step made the ground seem to bend beneath her. Her gaze pierced through him, and Kale felt as though she could see every thought, every fear. "You are not like the others I fought," she said, her tone strange, almost thoughtful. Kale did not know what to reply. He had not seen her fight, but he knew what she meant. The battle had already taken countless lives. She had probably stood against whole squads of soldiers. Yet here she was, speaking instead of striking. The silence between them grew heavy. The forest seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them locked in a strange moment. Kyle realized his chance to speak could decide his fate. He tried to break the tension with a smile, though his heart raced. "What do you want from me?" he asked. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She leaned closer, her voice almost a whisper. "What do you want?" The question stunned him. No warrior, no enemy, should have asked such a thing. His lips moved before he thought, his fear mixing with strange boldness. "You," he joked. For a heartbeat, he expected death. Instead, her eyes widened just slightly, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she lifted her hand to the clasp of her armor. The sound of metal shifting filled the air. Kale froze as the sound of shifting armor echoed between the trees. The alien warrior's hand moved with deliberate slowness, unclasping one piece after another. Her armor didn't fall away completely, but enough shifted to reveal that the living material was not only protection, it was a symbol. It pulsed faintly with her heartbeat, glowing veins running through it like streams of light. She was not just wearing armor. She was bonded to it. Her eyes stayed on him the entire time. Kyle felt the weight of that gaze press against him more than any blade could. He had spoken a careless joke, words born from fear and defiance, but now he wondered if he had crossed some line. His heart pounded in his chest, his hands tightening around the hilt of his sword. You, she repeated softly, as though testing the word. Her accent gave it a strange edge, but her tone was not angry. It was curious, almost amused. She took another step closer, and Kyle instinctively stepped back until his boots scraped against a root. The forest seemed to lean in, the vines shifting with faint movement as if they were listening too. Kyle forced himself to breathe. I didn't mean it, he said quickly, trying to soften the edge of his words. It was a joke. Her expression didn't change, though her lips curled slightly, almost like a smile. A joke, she echoed, tasting the word. Humans hide fear with strange words. Kyle swallowed hard. Maybe. But sometimes a joke is all we have. The warrior tilted her head. Her hair shimmered as light caught it, a deep green glow flowing through the strands. She raised her hand and reached out, her fingers brushing the edge of his armor. Kyle stiffened at the touch, every muscle screaming for him to move, but something about her presence held him still. Her hand lingered for a moment, before she pulled it back. You are not a soldier anymore, she said quietly. Your blade is old, your stance is weak, yet your eyes. She leaned closer, her face only inches from his. Your eyes are not broken. Kyle didn't know how to answer. He had lived through battles that left scars on his body and deeper scars on his mind. Many of his friends had fallen, their eyes empty of hope long before death came. Yet this alien warrior, who could have ended him in a heartbeat, stood there studying him as if she saw something worth noticing. Why are you here? He asked finally. Her gaze shifted for the first time, turning toward the burning horizon. The war brought me, she said. But the war is not what I seek. Kyle frowned. Then what do you seek? She turned back to him, her eyes glowing brighter in the fading light. An answer. The weight of her words pressed against him, though he didn't fully understand them. He wanted to ask more, but the distant roar of engines broke the moment. Overhead, alien ships streaked through the sky, fire trailing behind them as they clashed with Earth's defenses. The ground trembled with distant impacts. The war was far from over. The warrior's expression hardened. She looked back at Kale and said, They will come here soon. If you wish to live, you must follow me. Kale hesitated. Every instinct screamed that trusting her was madness. She was an enemy, part of the force that had invaded his world. Yet as he looked into her eyes, he saw something there that didn't match the cold cruelty of war. He saw fire, yes, but also something else, choice. Why me? He asked quietly. Her reply came swift, without hesitation. Because you said you. Before Kale could respond, she turned sharply and began, walking into the forest, her hair and armor glowing faintly with every step. For a long moment he stood frozen, torn between fear and an unexplainable pull toward her. Then, tightening his grip on his sword, he followed. The forest closed around them, the light dimming as night began to fall. Kale did not know where she was leading him. But one thing was clear. His life had changed the moment he spoke that single reckless word. The night air grew colder as Kale followed the alien warrior deeper into the forest. The sounds of distant battles echoed behind them, explosions rumbling like thunder, streaks of fire across the sky, the cries of soldiers both human and alien. Yet here, beneath the thick canopy of twisting branches and glowing vines, there was only silence. Kale's boots crunched softly against the moss, but the warrior moved without a sound, her steps light and controlled, as if she were part of the forest itself. Every time Kale's eyes drifted toward her, he found it difficult to look away. Her form was both graceful and dangerous, her armor pulsing faintly with veins of light. The way her green hair shimmered with every step gave her an otherworldly beauty. Yet he reminded himself she was still the enemy. She belonged to the army that had brought fire and death to his world. Where are you taking me? He asked finally, his voice low. She did not turn, but her reply carried back to him, steady and calm. Somewhere safe. Kale gave a humorless laugh. Safe? There is no safe anymore, not for us, not for anyone. At that she stopped and glanced back. Her glowing eyes locked onto his, unblinking. There is always safe, she said firmly. It is only hidden. For a moment he didn't know what to say. Her words didn't sound like those of a conqueror. They sounded like someone searching for something, someone running from the same chaos. Cale's suspicion grew sharper. Why would she help him? What did she want from him? Still, he followed. Soon the forest opened into a clearing. At its center stood a stone structure old and half-buried by vines. The walls were etched with strange markings, glowing faintly as if the forest itself fed them with energy. Cale frowned. This was no human ruin. It belonged to something older, maybe even older than the aliens themselves. The warrior stepped forward and touched the wall. The glowing marks flared brighter at her touch and a hidden door slid open with a low hum. Cale's breath caught. This was no ruin. It was a sanctuary. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. Inside. Cale hesitated. You expect me to walk into a place I've never seen? Opened by someone I don't trust? For the first time, she gave a small smile, though it carried no humor. You followed me this far. Your trust has already been given. Cale clenched his jaw but said nothing. She was right. Against his better judgment, something in him had chosen to follow her. Slowly, he stepped inside. The chamber within glowed with soft light. Crystals embedded in the walls pulsed like slow heartbeats, filling the air with warmth. Strange symbols curved across the stone floor, some familiar, some alien. Cale turned in wonder, but the warrior moved past him without pause, kneeling near. The center. What is this place? Cale asked. An old refuge, she said softly. My people do not speak of it, but I found it. It does not belong to them. It belongs to something before them, and now it belongs to me. Her words sent a chill through Cale. She was not only separating herself from her people, she was claiming something hidden, something powerful. She looked up at him then, her eyes glowing brighter. You asked what I wanted. I want truth. I want to know why this war must never end, why my people fight without question, why yours resist without hope. This place may give me the answer. Cale stared at her, stunned. She was not just a warrior. She was a seeker, someone questioning the chains of her own kind. Before he could speak, the ground shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling as a roar filled the air. Cale stumbled, his hand going to his sword. The warrior stood swiftly, her armor flaring with light. Her gaze hardened as she listened to the sound outside. They have followed us, she said. Cale's blood ran cold. Whoever they were, he knew one thing. He was about to find out why she had chosen him. The ground trembled again, louder this time, as if something massive pressed through the forest. Cale gripped his sword tightly, his breath sharp and fast. The warrior stood calm, her glowing armor casting faint light across the chamber. She didn't look afraid, only ready. Cale turned to her. Who's coming? Her eyes narrowed. Hunters. The word made his chest tighten. Hunters? What do they hunt? Her gaze slid to him, steady and unflinching. Us. Cale felt the air leave his lungs. These weren't wild beasts. They were soldiers, killers sent to track down anyone who strayed from the war's design. He realized now what it meant. She was a deserter. She had left her place in the army, and they would not allow that. The warrior pressed her hand against the wall, and the glowing pattern shifted, sealing the hidden door. The hum of ancient energy filled the chamber, but Cale knew it wouldn't stop determined pursuers for long. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Why bring me here? Why not leave me? I'm no use to you. Her expression softened, though only slightly. You are more use than you know. A human who does not break. A voice that dares to joke when facing death. That is not useless. Cale shook his head, uneasy. You don't even know me. I know enough. She turned her face toward the sound outside. The forest groaned as if something heavy moved between the trees. Then faintly, Cale heard the crackle of strange weapons followed by guttural voices that were not human. The warrior lifted her arm and her armor shifted, reshaping itself to cover her shoulders and arms more fully. Blades of living metal extended, from her gauntlets gleaming in the crystal light. Cale swallowed hard. He had seen skilled soldiers before, but never anyone like her. "They are close," she whispered. "You must stay behind me." Cale bristled at the order. "I can fight." Her glowing eyes met his, and for a moment he thought she might laugh. But instead, she gave a small nod. "Then fight, but do not die. Your life is not mine to waste." Before Cale could respond, the wall behind them shook violently. Dust rained down as cracks split across the stone. The strange voices outside grew louder. They were breaking through. The warrior stepped forward, her blades gleaming. She glanced back, once at Cale. "If they take me, they will kill you after. If they take you, they will make me watch. Do not let them." Cale's grip tightened on his sword. His heart pounded, but something inside him steadied. For years he had fought battles that felt hopeless. But this moment, this strange bond, with an enemy who no longer seemed like one, ignited a fire in him he thought was gone. With a thunderous crack, the wall shattered. 3 towering figures forced their way inside, their armor dark and jagged, glowing red with violent energy. Their eyes burned with the same light, and in their hands were weapons that pulsed like molten veins. The warrior moved instantly, a blur of green and silver. Her blades clashed with theirs in a storm of sparks, the air filling with the sound of ringing metal. She fought with precision, every strike graceful yet brutal. Kyle didn't wait. He surged forward with a shout, his sword meeting the jagged weapon of one hunter. The force nearly drove him back, but he held on, pushing with every ounce of strength he had. The chamber became a storm of light and steel. Crystals shattered as strikes missed their marks, glowing shards scattering across the floor. Kyle's arms ached as he parried again and again, but the fire in his chest kept him standing. One hunter shoved him hard and he hit the wall, his vision spinning. The hunter raised its weapon for a killing blow. Then a green blur cut through the air. The warrior's blade pierced the creature's chest, ripping through armor and energy. The hunter collapsed with a scream that shook the chamber. Cale's chest heaved as he looked at her, glowing in the crystal light, fierce and unyielding. For the first time, he didn't see her as an enemy. He saw her as a shield. And in that moment, he realized something terrifying and strange. He didn't want her to fall, not because she was protecting him, but because he could not imagine this war without her. The chamber filled with smoke and sparks as the fight raged on. Cale's arms trembled with every strike, his sword clashing against weapons far stronger than his own. He had fought soldiers before, but these hunters were different. Their movements were sharper, their blows heavier, as if they were built for one purpose alone, to end anything that stood in their way. The warrior fought like a storm. Her blades curved with precision, cutting through armor with blinding speed. Every movement was fluid, her body weaving between strikes as if she had danced this battle 1,000 times. Yet Cale could see the strain building in her glowing armor. The pulsing veins of light across it flickered as the hunters pressed harder. Cale ducked as one swung at his head, the blade whistling past by inches. He rolled across the floor, grabbed his sword tighter, and drove it upward into the hunter's leg. Sparks burst as the blade sank halfway through before sticking. The creature roared, backhanding him so hard he crashed into the wall. Pain exploded across his ribs and he gasped for air, but he didn't let go of his sword. The warrior leapt between them, her blades crossing in a shower of sparks that threw the hunter's back for a moment. She stood tall, breathing heavily, and looked at Cale. Her voice cut through the chaos. "Do not stop." Cale coughed, forcing himself to his knees. Blood ran down his lip. But when he met her eyes, something inside him hardened. He pushed himself back onto his feet, sword in hand. The pain in his body was nothing compared to the fire rising in his chest. The hunters came again. This time, Cale didn't hesitate. He blocked, parried, and struck back with everything he had, each move fueled by stubborn will rather than skill. The warrior flowed beside him, her blades finding every weakness, every opening. For the first time, they fought as one. Then one of the hunters roared and slammed its weapon into the ground. A shockwave tore across the chamber, throwing them both off balance. The crystals in the walls cracked, their glow dimming. Kyle hit, the ground hard, dust choking his lungs. When he looked up, he saw the warrior pinned. One hunter had her against the wall, its jagged blade pressing against her throat. She struggled, but the pressure of its strength forced her down. Kyle's heart pounded wildly. Without thinking, he charged. His sword struck the hunter's back, sparks spraying. But it wasn't enough. The creature roared, swinging its arm to throw him aside. Kale held on, teeth gritted, and drove the blade deeper. The hunter staggered, its grip loosening just enough. The warrior seized the moment, driving her twin blades through its chest. The creature convulsed before collapsing in a blaze of red light. Kale fell to his knees, gasping, his sword slipping from his hands. The chamber fell silent except for the crackle of fading energy. 2 hunters lay dead. The third, wounded, snarled before retreating into the broken wall, its heavy steps shaking the ground as it vanished into the forest. Kyle leaned back against the wall, every muscle aching. He glanced at the warrior, who stood tall despite the flickering light in her armor. She breathed heavily, her green hair damp against her face, her glowing eyes fixed on him. "You fought," she said simply. Kale let out a rough laugh. "Barely." She stepped closer, crouching in front of him. Her hand brushed his chest, light as a feather, as if checking he was still alive. Not barely. Enough. Her words carried more weight than he expected. In her voice, he heard something different: respect. Kyle's chest tightened. She was no longer just a stranger, no longer just the enemy. She was someone who had chosen him, trusted him, and fought beside him. As the crystals dimmed around them, he realized something even more dangerous than the hunters outside. For the first time since the war began, he didn't feel alone. Our chamber smelled of scorched metal and dust. Faint light still glowed from the cracked crystals, but most of the room was shadow now. Kyle sat with his back to the wall, chest aching, his breath uneven. Across from him, the warrior stood silent, her glowing armor flickering faintly as though even it had suffered wounds from the fight. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched, heavy with the weight of what had just happened. Finally, Kyle broke it. "You saved me." Her head turned slightly, her green hair falling across her shoulder. "You saved me first." Kyle gave a weak laugh. "I almost died doing it." Her glowing eyes softened, though only slightly. "That is what makes it matter." The words struck something inside Kale. He had fought battles before, had saved comrades, but the way she said it felt different. It was not just gratitude, it was recognition. She saw him not as an enemy, not as a pawn in a war, but as something else. She stepped closer, kneeling in front of him. The flicker of her armor lit her face, revealing features both sharp and beautiful. Her gaze lingered on his wounds, and without asking, she placed her hand against his chest. Kyle stiffened, but then warmth spread through him. Her armor shifted, releasing faint streams of light that seeped into his body. His pain dulled, his breath steadied. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice low. "Sharing strength," she said. "Your body is weak from the battle. Mine still holds power." Kale blinked in surprise. He had never heard of such a thing. Alien technology was rumored to be advanced, but this felt like more than machines. It felt alive. He studied her as the warmth spread through his body. "Why risk yourself for me? I'm just one human." Her eyes met his, glowing brighter in the dark. "Because you are not like the others. You do not bow. You do not beg. When I asked what you wanted, you said something no one else would have dared." Cal remembered his reckless words, spoken half in fear, half in defiance. "I told you I wanted you, that was a joke." She tilted her head, her lips curving faintly. A joke. Yet it carried truth. Kale's heart thudded faster. He looked away, embarrassed, but her hand remained on his chest, steady and warm. Outside, the forest groaned with distant sounds. The surviving hunter had not given up. More would come. Kyle knew this fragile peace would not last. Still, in this small moment, it felt as though the war had paused. The warrior finally withdrew her hand and stood. She turned toward the broken wall, scanning the shadows beyond. We cannot stay here. They will return, and in greater numbers. Kyle forced himself to his feet, wincing, though the pain was less. Then where do we go? She looked back at him, her eyes sharp, but there was something else in them too. Trust. To the heart of the forest. There is another place, hidden even from the hunters. But it is dangerous. Kyle gave a dry chuckle. Everything's dangerous these days. Her lips curved again, almost like a smile. Yes, but with danger comes choice, and choice reveals truth. He didn't fully understand her words, but he nodded. Gripping his sword tighter, he followed, as she stepped into the night. The forest was alive with strange lights. Vines pulsed with faint colors, and the air shimmered with energy that seemed older than either of them. Kyle walked beside her now, not behind. He no longer felt like a prisoner or a stray survivor. For the first time, he felt like a partner. As they moved deeper into the glowing forest, Kyle glanced at her. She was silent, her face unreadable, but he could feel the weight of something unspoken between them. Something that had begun with a careless joke and was now becoming something far more dangerous. Hope. The deeper they walked into the glowing forest, the stranger it became. The trees rose taller, their bark etched with patterns of light. Some leaves shimmered like glass, others hummed faintly, releasing a soft vibration through the air. Kyle felt like he had stepped into a dream, yet the danger in his chest remained sharp. The warrior moved with calm purpose, but Kyle could sense her alertness. Her head tilted slightly at each sound, her hand never far from the blades her armor could summon in a heartbeat. Kyle kept his sword ready, though he knew it was nothing compared to her weapons. Still, he refused to let himself walk in silence like a child being guarded. After a long stretch of quiet, he spoke. You keep saying you're looking for truth. What kind of truth? She slowed, her glowing eyes reflecting the light of the vines around them. For a moment she said nothing, then finally answered. My people call themselves eternal. They say we were made to conquer, to fight without end until all others bow or break. But I have walked their path and I have seen what it creates. Nothing but ashes. Nothing but silence. Her voice was calm, but there was bitterness beneath it. Kale studied her face, wondering how many battles she had fought, how many lives she had ended, and what it meant for her to question her own kind. And you think this place, the forest, the old ruins, will give you answers? Her gaze lifted to the branches above, where glowing leaves swayed without wind. This place is older than my people, older than yours. It holds memories. If I can find them, maybe I will know if there is another way. Kyle walked beside her in silence for a moment. He had fought wars, seen destruction, lost friends, but never had he imagined one of the invaders questioning their own reason to exist. It made her seem less like a monster, more like someone trapped in chains she didn't choose. A sudden rustle ahead made them both stop. The ground quivered, and from the shadows stepped creatures unlike the hunters. These were not armored soldiers but beasts, towering on four legs, their skin covered with plates of stone-like armor, their eyes glowing red. Their breath hissed like steam, and their tails lashed the ground, cracking the earth. Kyle tensed, raising his sword. Friends of yours? He muttered. The warrior's expression hardened. No, guardians of the forest. They do not serve us. They serve only the old power. The beasts growled, their massive forms blocking the path. One stepped forward, lowering its head, ready to charge. Kale's heart hammered. He had faced alien soldiers, but this felt different. These creatures belonged to the land itself, and they would not let trespassers pass easily. The warrior raised her hand, her armor glowing brighter. Do not attack unless I tell you, she warned Kale. He shot her a sharp look. If they charge, I won't just stand here. Before she could answer, the first beast lunged. Its roar shook the air as it thundered toward them, claws tearing up the ground. Kale braced himself, but the warrior moved first, leaping with inhuman speed. Her blades flashed, striking the beast's armored head, sparks flying. The creature stumbled but did not fall. Another beast circled Kyle, its red eyes locked on him. He swallowed hard, his sword trembling in his hand, but he forced himself forward, slashing at its side. The blade skittered across its stone-like armor, barely scratching it. The beast swung its tail, striking him across the chest and sending him sprawling into the dirt. The warrior shouted something in her own language, her voice sharp and commanding. The beasts hesitated, their growls lowering. She stood tall, her glowing armor pulsing with light, and raised both blades high. The creatures growled again, then slowly backed away, their massive forms vanishing into the forest shadows. Kyle coughed, dragging himself back to his feet. "You could have mentioned they listened to you." Her eyes glowed faintly as she turned to him. "They do not listen to me. They listen to strength. And strength is all they respect." Kyle studied her, chest heaving, and for the first time, he realized she wasn't just surviving in this forest. She belonged here. The thought sent a shiver down his spine, not of fear, but of wonder. The forest grew even stranger as they pressed onward. The air thickened, filled with a faint hum that buzzed in Kyle's bones. The glowing vines no longer seemed like plants. They pulsed like veins, carrying some hidden energy through the land. Every step felt heavier, as though the forest was testing them, weighing their worth. Kale tried not to show his unease, but he couldn't stay silent. What is this place, really? The warrior slowed, her glowing eyes scanning the endless patterns carved into tree trunks and stones. "It is the memory of those who came before. My people say it is forbidden to enter, that the old ones cursed it." Kyle frowned. "And you just ignored them?" Her lips curved faintly. "I stopped obeying a long time ago." Her answer stirred something in him. She wasn't just rebelling, she was searching for freedom. He wondered how much of her life had been lived under orders, under chains made of honor and fear. Soon, they reached another ruin, half buried under roots thicker than Kale's body. The entrance yawned open, breathing cool air into the forest. Strange crystals jutted from the ground around it, glowing faintly like watchful eyes. The warrior stepped inside first, her hand brushing the carved walls as if they might speak. Kale followed, the silence wrapping around him like a cloak. The chamber was vast, the ceiling lost in shadow. In its center stood a tall stone pillar, etched with markings that shimmered when her armor drew near. She placed her hand on the pillar. Instantly, light rippled across it, filling the chamber with shifting images. Kale gasped as figures appeared, tall beings cloaked in radiant light standing in circles around worlds. The visions played like echoes of history, showing great wars, broken planets, and endless rivers of fire. "What is this?" Kyle whispered. Her voice was low, almost reverent. "The truth." The images shifted again. Now Kale saw her people, the armored warriors he had fought, kneeling before the radiant figures. They were not born to fight. They were made, shaped from flesh and metal, bound by living armor that tied their souls to war. Kale's blood chilled. "They created you, to be soldiers." The warrior's eyes glowed brighter, her jaw tight. "Yes, we were not born free. We were forged for conquest. My people call it honor, I call it chains." Kyle felt his chest tighten. All the destruction, the endless invasions, the merciless battles. It wasn't their choice. It was their design. He looked at her, standing so close to the truth, and for the first time he saw not a warrior but someone who had been robbed of her own life. Her hand trembled slightly against the pillar. "This is why I left. I could not obey anymore. I needed to see for myself." Kyle stepped closer. "And now you know." She turned to him, her eyes fierce but also pained. "Now I know I am nothing more than a weapon in their eyes. And yet," her voice softened, "when I look at you, I feel something they never told me existed." Kale's breath caught. The chamber's light reflected in her gaze, making her seem almost human in that moment. He wanted to ask what she meant, but before the words could leave his mouth, the pillar darkened. The chamber shook violently. Cracks split the walls and dust rained down. Kale stumbled back, sword in hand. "They have found us," the warrior said, her voice sharp again. Kale's heart pounded. "The hunters?" She shook her head grimly. "Worse. If they know I touched the memory, they will send their highest. Not hunters. Executioners." Kale tightened his grip on his sword, though fear burned in his chest. Whatever came next would not be like anything they had faced before. And yet as he looked at her, standing proud, glowing with defiance, he knew he would not run. Not from her. Not now. The chamber quaked as if the forest itself recoiled. Kyle steadied himself against the wall, his sword drawn, though he knew steel alone would not save him. The warrior stood tall, her armor flaring with green light, her blades humming with energy, as though sensing what was coming. Then the air split. A sound like tearing metal roared through the chamber, and from the broken wall stepped figures far larger than the hunters. Their armor was black as obsidian, carved with cruel edges that drank the light instead of reflecting it. Red veins pulsed across their bodies, each movement radiating raw power. Their faces were hidden behind helmets shaped like skulls, their eyes glowing with cold fire. Kale's chest tightened. These were no ordinary soldiers. He didn't need her to name them to know. They were death-made flesh. Executioners. 3 of them stepped inside, their footsteps shaking the stone floor. The warrior's face was hard, but her jaw clenched. For the first time, Kale saw something in her eyes that unsettled him. Not fear, but the knowledge of what these beings meant. "They were made to end traitors," she said quietly, never taking her eyes from them. "They will not stop." Kale's throat was dry, but he forced words out. "Then we fight." Her gaze flicked to him, and for a brief second the corner of her lips curved, half pride, half sorrow. "Then we fight." The executioners moved in perfect silence, spreading out to surround them. One raised a weapon that looked like a spear, fused with lightning, its tip glowing. With a sudden lunge, it struck. The warrior intercepted, her blades clashing against it in a storm of sparks that lit the chamber. The force of the impact sent her skidding back across the stone. Another executioner swung at Kale. He ducked low, the spear's edge slicing the air above him. He thrust his sword at the gap between its armor plates, but the blade barely pierced, before the creature's arm slammed into him like a hammer, throwing him to the ground. His vision blurred, pain flooding through him, but he forced himself up. He couldn't stop. Not now. The warrior darted across the floor, her movements faster than Kale had ever seen. She clashed with 2 executioners at once, her blades carving glowing arcs. Sparks showered the chamber, the walls shaking with every blow. Yet even her skill barely held them back. Their strikes were heavy, relentless, designed to crush. Kale staggered forward, gripping his sword tighter. He rushed at the 3rd executioner, slashing wildly. The creature caught his blade in its massive hand, the steel screeching against its grip. It lifted him effortlessly and hurled him across the chamber. Kale hit the pillar hard, the air leaving his lungs in a ragged gasp. The warrior cried out, her voice echoing through the chamber, but she didn't falter. She leapt high, driving both blades down onto an executioner's shoulder. The armor cracked, light bursting from the wound. The creature roared, slamming its weapon into the ground, knocking her back in a wave of energy. Kale coughed, dragging himself upright. His sword lay shattered at his feet, broken from the impact. His chest burned, his arms trembled. But when he looked at her, still fighting, still refusing to bow, something inside him ignited. He grabbed a shard of the broken sword, sharp and jagged. With a shout that tore his throat raw, he charged. The executioner turned too late. Kale drove the shard deep into the crack the warrior had made. Red energy flared, the creature jerking violently before collapsing to the ground with a thunderous crash. The chamber went still for a heartbeat. Then the remaining 2 turned their burning eyes on Kale. The warrior rushed to his side, her blades raised. She stood in front of him, protective, her armor glowing brighter than ever. Her voice was fierce, filled with fire. "They will not take you." Kyle's breath came ragged, but he grinned through blood. Then let's finish this. The two executioners stepped forward, their weapons raised, and the chamber shook as the final battle began. The chamber thundered with each strike as the last two executioners closed in. Their weapons burned with red fire, cutting through the air like bolts of lightning. Kyle's body ached, every breath sharp with pain, but he refused to fall. Beside him, the warrior stood tall, her armor glowing brighter than ever, her twin blades alive with energy. One executioner lunged. She met its strike head-on, sparks bursting as metal clashed. Her movements were no longer just skilled, they were desperate, fueled by something beyond training. She fought not for duty, not for glory, but for him. The second executioner swung at Cale. He ducked low, the weapon slicing a line of fire across the pillar behind him. He had no sword now, only the jagged shard of steel gripped tight in his hand. He dodged again, his legs screaming with exhaustion until the warrior cut across the room, forcing the creature back with a flurry of strikes. But the executioners pressed harder. Every blow rattled the chamber, dust raining from the ceiling. Cracks split the floor, glowing faintly with ancient light. Cale staggered, nearly falling, until the warrior grabbed his arm, pulling him close. "You cannot fight them like this," she said, her voice sharp but not unkind. "Your blade is broken. Your body is failing." Cale's jaw tightened. "Then what do I do? Run? Leave you here?" Her glowing eyes burned into his. "No. Stand with me." The words struck him deeper than any weapon. He nodded once, gripping the shard tighter. Together they faced the executioners. The warrior darted forward, her blades striking with lightning, speed, drawing the enemy's focus. Cale followed her movements, waiting, searching for the moment she had shown him before, the weakness. And then he saw it, a crack in the armor, a glowing vein exposed at the joint. With a shout he charged. He drove the shard deep, twisting with all his strength. The creature roared, its weapon swinging wildly, but the warrior was already there, her blades flashing. She finished the strike, severing the creature's chest in a burst of red fire. It collapsed, shaking the ground. Only one remained, the largest. Its eyes burned brighter, fury radiating from it. It raised its weapon high, bringing it down with a force that split the floor. The shockwave threw Cale to his knees, but the warrior held her ground, her armor blazing with emerald light. She let out a cry in her own language, a sound that carried defiance and power. Then she leapt higher than Cale thought possible, both blades plunging deep into the executioner's chest. Energy exploded outward, shaking the chamber. The creature staggered, grabbing her with massive hands, trying to crush her even as it fell. Cale's heart froze. Without thinking, he ran forward, grabbing her arm and pulling with every ounce of strength left in him. The two of them tumbled, free as the executioner collapsed, crashing into the stone floor, its light fading to nothing. Silence fell. Kyle lay on the ground, gasping, his body trembling. Slowly he turned his head. The warrior knelt beside him, her glowing armor cracked and dimming, but her eyes still alive with fire. "It's over," Kyle whispered. She shook her head slightly. "No, the war is not over. But this battle is ours." Cale gave a tired laugh, closing his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, she was still watching him, her face closer than ever. For the first time, there was no hardness in her gaze, only something soft, something human. "You asked what I wanted," she said quietly. Cale's throat tightened. He remembered the joke, the reckless word that had begun all of this. His lips curved into a faint smile. "And what did you want?" Her armor flickered, and with slow, deliberate motion she removed the last piece of her helmet. Her face, free of the alien mask, was breathtaking, young, fierce, beautiful, yet vulnerable. She leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "You." Kyle's heart pounded, but for once he had no words. No, he only met her gaze, knowing that in this ruined chamber, amidst war and death, something had been born that neither of them could deny. The forest outside hummed with life again, as if recognizing their victory. And though the war would rage, Kale knew one truth burned brighter than all others. He had found her and she had chosen him.